we go, Tim. Hello, Tym Moss. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Wendy Stuart?
I am wonderful because we are on Wednesday, and Wednesday is If These Walls Could Talk.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Good to see you all virtually, that is. Tim, I feel like I just saw you because I did.
Yes, you did. We got to spend like an entire day together. That was wonderful.
We had an amazing day celebrating Bronx Pride, produced by Apollonia Cruz, the Queen of the Bronx, and a plethora of amazing volunteers, Tim. Apollonia, you know what? Who doesn't want to support Apollonia? She has done so much to create community, to affect community. And I have to tell you, some things just leave you gobsmacked when you're done with them. And that event actually did, because the amount of people that wanted to perform, that had something to say, that had a platform, all right, and that didn't have a Jenner legacy, kids that have created their own path as performers. Just so inspiring. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's always just such a great event. And now you see why I enjoy doing so much with the Bronx. The community there is really incredible. And actually, I think after you had left, the Bronx Borough president, Vanessa Gibson,
she came late. Yeah.
She did come by. Yeah. So I at least got to see her and chat with her for a little while. I love her.
I've never met her. And but we had New York State Senator Sepulveda there, which was really wonderful.
Louis Sepulveda, yes. He was there as well. So that was very nice. Oh my God, it was so hot that day. Oh my God.
Ladies and gentlemen, how hot was it? You didn't need to fry the eggs on the street. You could have fried them in the air. I couldn't compete with all those amazing drag performers that I don't know what they're using for their foundation. Those girls not only did not break a sweat, they had on these amazing wigs and hair pieces, long sleeves with sequins, you know? And I was there in a little dress, and I'm like, my God, I wish I were here in a bathing suit. They were fabulous, Tim. They didn't even sweat it.
Yep. But I did my Welcome to the 60s number, come out with a walker. And, but I had 3 layers of clothes on, and 90-degree weather. I was sweating. I had 4 people ask me on the way to the stage, "Are you okay? You look like you're about to pass out." Luckily, I did not, and I got through the number. But the things we do for art.
Well, they were talking about you while you were out there, saying, "Is he going to be okay?" I'm like, I've never seen him go down in the middle of a performance.
That was one I was. Yeah, you could have made bets on that one, because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I was going to make it all the way through that one. And then a couple of nights ago, I stopped by to see a friend of mine at the Spot, Sutton Lee Seymour. Oh my God, this drag queen is so incredible. She's just remarkable. And she had just literally gotten off the plane from Venice, but she had been touring, doing a cruise line, a gay cruise, performing on that. And then when they were stopped for a few days, she flew once to Barcelona to perform, came back, did another run, and then flew to Turkey, Istanbul, and back, and then got on the plane from Venice without sleeping, got off the plane, came and did the show at the Spot. I'm so proud of her. She's just amazing. She's literally performing around the world. So
I wanted to ask you, because you know her better than I. How did she become so hot so quickly? What is it? What's her hook?
Sutton Lee Seymour?
Yeah.
Oh goodness. It was not overnight. Believe me, she's been working on this for many, many years.
But a lot of girls have. She's like, her name is everywhere, and God bless her. You know, she's up in the leagues now with Sherry Vine and all of those performers. Are all over. So
Paige Turner, Jackie Cox, who was on Drag Race, and Sutton Lee Seymour used to do these Christmas shows together.
I love it.
I swear to God, those should have been on CBS. They were that good.
Right.
They were just brilliant, original, festive, and with superior talent that those 3 have. So
wow. Well, it's always great to see someone really have their day and become an international star, you know, because it's about celebrating people.
Absolutely.
And while we are going to celebrate people, I'm so happy today to celebrate today's guest.
Yes.
And there's just so much about him. So I put my glasses on so I can share that all with you. This multi-talented, award-winning host has the ability to shine a light on everyone he interviews, and he leaves you craving more. Maybe it's his 43 years in the industry, and it's not surprising he started out pursuing an acting career, but his gift of gab and quick wit and vocal talent and his love of music led him to perform on stages from Atlantic City to Las Vegas and everywhere in between. You might know him from his show with 1,000 interviews or more, I think. Richard Skipper celebrates. Let's put our hands together for Richard Skipper. Yay.
I'm so glad to be here. I love you both so much.
Oh my!
I have to tell you, I think the reason that it's so hot in New York is because of you two.
Oh.
Everywhere you show up, it's a hot event. And I saw you on Pride Day in New York.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you came over and said hello.
So much fun.
Every time you see us, though, we're sweating. So today we are. This is good. We're cool, calm. No, because Tim and I are a hot mess a lot of the time. You know.
I know.
Hardcore, but you know what? We're all in our little AC places of the world today. So, Richard, welcome here. Yeah. Thrilled to have you. You're a name on everyone's refrigerator magnet.
I have to tell you, years and years ago, I got the good fortune of performing. When I was performing as Carol Channing, I performed with the New York City Gay Men's Chorus at Carnegie Hall. And I walked out and he said, Carol, it is so nice to have you here. And I said, it's so nice to be had at Carnegie Hall. They brought the house down and I can still hear the laughter and the applause in my ear. So, I want to say, when I reached out to you and Tim to do this show, because I'm going to Provincetown, which we'll talk about.
Yes.
You jumped at the chance to bring me on, and I want to say both of you are stand-up people in a sit-down world.
Oh, I'm loving this.
So
I'll give you my address to send the flowers to after the show.
I'll gladly send them. I'll just gladly send them to you.
Well, you know what? We're here for you today, Richard.
Yes, we're celebrating you. We're celebrating
today. We celebrate Richard Skipper. And my first introduction to you, I had heard your name, of course, throughout the years. But I have to tell you, when the pandemic happened, suddenly the name Richard Skipper was everywhere. All at once. You had Richard Skipper Celebrates, but you also had other shows. Every time I would go online, there was another show. I'm like, how does this person do this? Getting the guests, these wonderful interviews, prepping for them. What is your secret to bringing out the unique quality in each and every person that you interview?
Insanity. That's the secret. No, I have to tell you, I mean, and you both know this better than anybody. A lot of people tune in and we're grateful for everyone who's showing up.
Yes.
But they may think that we hit a switch and we go live.
Right.
It doesn't happen that way. Because, I mean, the interesting thing is that when I started doing this, I started doing it in response, as you said, to COVID. And I started doing these live shows, and it really took over my life. I was doing shows almost daily, and it was a lot of work. I mean, I can show you here. I mean, today I'm interviewing Susan Silver. You should get her on the show.
We've already had her, and we already read the book. I love her.
Incredible.
I love Susan. She's great. She's so funny.
But what has started happening is that people are now reaching out to me saying, can you book my client? I have a lot of publicists that call and everything. So I'm not really pursuing the interviews as much as they're pursuing me. It's still a lot of work. And I wish, and I know that both of you are going to agree with me when I say this, if we could only figure out a way to monetize this.
Yes.
I know that right now, the Writers Guild and actors are on strike.
Yeah, it's going to be a while too.
And for those who don't know, it's for a very good reason.
Yes.
Because, there are two things going on here. In New York City, Tim, you and I are very much a part of the New York City cabaret scene. I came to New York in 1979, 43 years ago. And the interesting thing about where we are right now is that when I first came to New York to perform in any of the cabaret rooms, you went in, you auditioned, and they would take $2 off of every cover. And you could walk away with little money in your pocket if you were able to bring in that audience. Now, it is virtually impossible for any artist in New York City to make a living doing what we used to do. When I was performing as Carol Channing, I performed all over the country. And what was really wonderful, let's go to pre-9/11, I would get booked in colleges and universities around the country because the subscription series would cover the cost of bringing a single act in. Then 9/11 happened. And people got, for pardon the expression, gun shy, and they stopped bringing in singular acts because subscription series dropped by the wayside. What's happening right now in this country this summer, a lot of theaters are shutting down their summer series because they're not able to bring in the audience. And it's gotten harder and harder and harder. COVID had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, that did. I was going to say it.
In a world in which the uncertainty of what's going to happen from day to day prevents people are afraid to commit far in advance for the most part. Major shows are shutting down. We all could be so lucky to be a Taylor Swift, who is, to me, the epitome of what an artist is like, who takes care of her fans. She is hands-on with her fans. She's very much involved in her career. But it has gotten harder and harder and harder to make a living in this business. And you've got the Barry Dillers and the Bob Igers who are at the top of the food chain saying, these actors, are asking for too much when they're making $27-30 million a year.
Well, you just hit why we are having this strike, Richard. That's what this strike is about. But I'm going to throw this question to you, and I'm not sure it's going to be an easy answer. What's the next business model? Where do we go next with this? Because part of the strike is not only about the money, right? But what the heck are we going to do with AI when they can duplicate people's voices for voiceover, for dubbing in films? And we know what's coming after that when they can actually duplicate and create people that don't even really need to be living human beings. So what I always say, what do you think the plan is?
Well, I want to go back for just a moment. Again, when I came to New York, and I don't know how many casting directors are out there who cast background in films, but when I first came, it seemed like hundreds of casting directors.
There were.
That were casting background in films. You look at a film, for example, like The 10 Commandments, and of course that was some time ago. There were and you'd had Kathy Garber on the show, who was one of the extras in The 10 Commandments. They utilized thousands and thousands and thousands of extras. I also want to mention Carl Laemmle, who created Universal Studios. There's a great documentary about him. During Nazi Germany, he was going to Poland and getting family members and people from Poland and bringing them to the United States. In order for these people to be able to come to the United States, they had to have a work visa. So he hired them as extras and working at Universal Studios. Great documentary. Everybody watch this film because I was blown away by this. So these films utilized a lot of extras. And one of the fun things for me is, because I know so many people, is catching my friends in background moments.
I love that, right?
It's always fun. But with AI, all of that can be eliminated.
Right.
Create a background of actors that are not even there.
Right.
They can take our images. They can take something that we say innocuously in an interview, like we're doing now, and they can rephrase this to look like that we are endorsing a project or a product or anything. And one of the issues with AI right now is that a lot of contracts when you sign these contracts, and I don't know if you two have been up against this, but when you sign the contract, it says we have the right to your image.
Right.
Mhm.
And
But that had happened to me this year, Richard, with a commercial that I signed away, and somebody, Prince Fleet Eastwood, caught it on
Palm
TV.
Springs.
He's like, I just caught your commercial. I'm like, what commercial? And he, sent a copy of it to me. I'm like, holy mother of God, how did they do that? And I went to their ad agency and they said, we have a signed release from you. It was like from 7 years ago. And I found the release, I pulled it out of the drawer, and yep, I signed it. I signed everything away because I was so desperate for that, what they were going to pay me for that job. So victim of it right here.
Years ago, the movie Jeffrey came out, and people started telling me that they saw me in the movie. I said, it has to be somebody else. It's not me. And they said, no, you're in the movie. And I said, well, what am I doing? They said, you're at the Gay Pride March. This was when we were marching up Fifth Avenue for equality. And I said, well, was Danny with me? Danny's my husband. And I said, was Danny with me? And they said, well, we don't know because we were focused on you. And so we rented the VHS. This tells you how long ago this was. And we're watching the movie. And sure enough, the camera hones in on both of us. And it follows us for almost a block in this film. And of course, we were at a public event. And when you go to a public event, everyone, they could be filming you.
Right.
Sitting in a theater, anywhere, and you don't even know what's happening. And there we are in this film. It's a funny little moment because it captures both of us early on in our lives. But it's happening more and more. In answer to your question, I think that there needs to be regulations. It needs to be in the contracts, and that's what the actors are fighting for. I believe that there should be increments in payment, especially if something lasts a long time.
Right.
I interviewed Dorothy Lyman on my show. Dorothy Lyman, of course, was Naomi on Mama's Family.
Yeah.
And when they were doing Mama's Family, the producer, Joe Hamilton, who was married to Carol Burnett, came in and told everyone that there was the possibility of the show going into syndication. And if they all signed away, they would get a lump sum of money, but which she did. She said, I didn't have an agent or a manager looking over my contract at the time. If any of you are home on the weekends, if you're channel surfing, Mama's Family on Logo
and MeTV
is playing continuously. And this is a show, and her and Alan Kaiser and Vicki Lawrence don't get a Beverly Archer, who is also on the show. None of them are getting a penny from this show. And it's on every single day. And the problem, and you both know this, for all of us who are out there fighting for just a piece of the pie, we're not fighting for millions of dollars.
Right.
But for every one of us, there are 5, 10, 20, 100 people standing in the wings saying, I'm willing to do it for nothing.
Right.
And they want to do it because they want the exposure. And they are cutting off their noses to bite, to spite their faces. It's happened in the New York City cabaret scene, where performers we have been nickeled and dimed, down.
Right.
Where every aspect of a show rests on the performer's shoulders. These clubs will write to the performers and say, you only have 5 reservations. And if you don't bring in X number of people, we're going to either have to cancel the show or you're going to be charged for those empty seats above a certain number.
Oh my God.
Which means you're not going to get paid anything. Right.
My question is, why don't these clubs keep a mailing list? And you and I, we all do it, and send a notification goes out every time I do a show. A notification goes out every time you do a show. Why don't the clubs do this?
Because it all falls on the performer. Because I'm not going to defend the clubs for this, but every person I know is really overwhelmed. The people that have the clubs, they hire PR people, they're overwhelmed. Okay. The performers are overwhelmed. All right. And this thing that you just told me where you're going to have to pay for the seats if people don't show. That's the first time. I don't do cabaret, but I'm certainly out in this world doing everything else. I didn't realize they could hold you accountable to pay for seats. So Tim, to your point, not only are you not making any money, you end up having to owe money.
Yeah, you pay.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
I'm going to Provincetown.
Yes.
And
well, firstly, before you finish that thought, give the information in Provincetown, and then
I'm going to get there in just a moment.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
There you go, Tim.
Going to Provincetown, we first of all, I'm there August 5th, which is the actual anniversary of my coming to New York in 1979. August 5th, 1979. Danny and I go online. We're there in August. I'm there for one night. But we want to make a vacation out of it, obviously. So in order for us to stay in Provincetown, because they don't provide housing,
right,
it's going to cost Danny and me between $5,000 to $7,000 for the week. Wow. So we're actually staying in Truro, which is the next town over.
Oh, I love Truro. It's wonderful.
I love it too. So we're going to be staying there. But I am bringing up my original musical director, Michael Mackesy. God bless him. He got booked in Surflight Theater, 2 great acting roles. So he's not able to play for me. So Brian Summers is playing for me. But I am bringing him up. He's actually going to be staying with us because I could not afford to put him in his own hotel room or anything. Right. So we're going to be really cozy. But we got a room with 2 king-size beds. I mean, these are the choices that we have to make as artists,
right?
And and then the transportation. I have, Ron Spivak, if he's watching, has created incredible artwork for me. I have someone who's creating an opening video for me.
Nice.
I am doing as much as I can, like this show, to get the word out before I get there.
Absolutely.
And if either of you have ever performed in Provincetown, it's all about standing on the street and hawking your show.
You've got to hawk your show. Right.
I am doing as much as I can before I get there so that, and I do have some reservations that have sold, but I will be off to, all these things that I have to do to ensure selling out. And they've cut back. They're not taking chances on booking artists unless they've got their regulars for the summer. I'm booked for one night. And everyone who's watching this show, if you have friends in the area, please send them my way. Because when I sell out, I'm not going to say if, when I sell out, they'll book me again. And I'll be back to do it again, either before the summer is over.
That would be great.
The autumn, which is a great time to be there. Or next year, I'll come back and maybe do 2 nights next year. But I have to prove myself. This is my first time performing in Provincetown in 10 years. And it's my first time performing at the Post Office Cafe. And in answer to your question, Tim, August 5th, 8:30 p.m., Post Office Cafe in Provincetown.
Yes.
Wow.
Be there.
Be there or be square.
Now, let's rewind to the beginning.
Yes, rewind.
Richard Skipper, you're from South Carolina, correct?
Conway, South Carolina, which is
Yes.
a gateway to Myrtle Beach.
Just tell us real quick how it was growing up and how you discovered your voice for music and your love of entertaining.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to grow up, number one. I am.
The words out of my mouth, Richard Skipper, but it's better coming from you.
I talk about this all in the show, and and what's very interesting, I grew up on a tobacco farm in South Carolina. My father was one of 11 children. My mom was the oldest of 16. So I have lots of cousins and aunts and uncles, and this means nothing to any of them. Just to let you know that.
I was going to say they should all be coming to the show. That would be half the audience.
I would pack the house if it was family alone.
That's amazing.
So I grew up in the 1960s and 70s, and I'm a product of 1960s and 70s television. And in the 1960s and 70s, I'm older than both of you, I think. But when television shows would start, television stations around 5:30, 6 a.m. and they would sign off at 1 a.m. with the national anthem, and then
of course, I remember that.
So these networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and where we were, it was Channel 3, Channel 6, and Channel 13. Those were our 3 affiliate channels. Those 3 networks vied for the largest demographic that they could get. So you would see artists from my generation on with my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation. I'm showing a clip in my show to demonstrate this. After Tina Turner passed away, and everybody, you can go and see this on YouTube, on the Cher show, they did a tribute to the Beatles.
Yeah.
It was Cher, Tina Turner, and Kate Smith.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So my grandparents and my parents were watching to see Kate Smith.
Right.
And I was watching, but the networks knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look who they had.
When I saw that world of show business, the variety show, the television.
Oh, love the variety shows.
The specials. That was the world that I wanted to be a part of.
So
if I say in my show, if I could have jumped into the TV set, I would have been the happiest kid on the block.
Richard, what about I grew up, so we're in the same generation. I grew up with Ed Sullivan, Andy Williams. Those were did you watch all those shows?
Oh my God. Are you kidding me?
They were amazing.
Not only did I watch them, but I had a cassette tape recorder.
Yes.
I would record the shows, and then I would memorize everything, and I would act it out. We lived on Highway 544, which was a very rural area.
Yeah.
There's a bank now standing where my house was.
Wow.
When I went home a few years ago and I saw the bank, I burst into tears.
I would too.
Because the house is gone, but we had this great front porch. To the right of our house was Centenary United Methodist Church. And the only thing that separated our property from the church property was a cemetery. So I used to perform on our front porch.
The ghosts.
We had 2 birch trees in our front yard. Those were my spotlights. I would perform for the cemetery. They were a captive audience. They weren't going
anywhere. Right, exactly.
Literally, they're not going anywhere.
And I would get names off of the tombstones, and I would perform.
Oh, get out, Richard.
Yes, no. This was
this one goes out to Shirley over here.
Yes,
he had fans. He had fans in that cemetery.
Uncle Jinx over here. Uncle Jinx, are you laughing at me? And that's what I would perform on my there. And then, as time went on, when I was in high school, I used to do a lunchtime concert on the front steps of our high school. And I would go out and I would imitate Ernestine.
Yeah.
Laugh-In. I did a great Ernestine. My theme song was Steam Heat, not from Pajama Game as we knew it, but the way the Pointer Sisters did it on the Cal Burnett show.
Yes.
I did Eunice. I did Emily Latella. I did Rosanna Dana. I did all these things because I would, again, with my tape recorder, I would mimic these things. And I also started mimicking Carol Channing. Yeah. And that's how that started. I used to perform on the front steps of my high school.
Oh my God.
Move forward, 1974, because it's a pivotal year in my life. I turned 13. 3 things happened. Number 1, That's Entertainment came out.
Yeah.
And That's Entertainment was a celebration of all the MGM movies. I remember going to the Holiday Movie Theater on Main Street in my hometown. And I sat there going, someday I'm going to be up there. Someday I'm going to be up there.
I love it. I love it.
Well, years later, that theater is now a live theater. And I taken my show there twice to do it.
That is your family, your relatives must go crazy because they knew you growing up.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about that in a second. But watching this movie, there were so many people on the screen that as time went on, they became friends of mine. They became colleagues of mine. These stars in this film that I, pinching myself, I don't say this for bragging rights, but to say, these people are part of my life.
Right.
And I'm a part of their lives.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing to me.
Well, Richard, the thing that's coming into my head of how you manifested this from the cemetery to watching on the screen and just completely focused that was going to be the world that you were going to have, and you really made it happen. It's one of the best stories I've ever heard about manifestation, by the way.
Well, there's more to that, because the other thing that happened in 74 was I'm reading the book The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. I have the book right here. I've got my props here that I'm taking. Here it is, The Magic of Believing. I'm reading this book, and in the book it says, set your mind on a goal like a homing pigeon and go after it with dogged determination.
Mm-hmm.
And I closed the book. This is August 5th, 1974. And I go in and I say to my mom and dad, 5 years from today, I'm going to New York.
Wow.
And my parents looked at me, that I was speaking in tongues, that I was speaking a foreign language. They laughed at me. And I said, you laugh. But 5 years from today, I'm going to New York.
Know it.
So every year on August 5th, I would go, 4 years from today, I'm going to New York. 3 years from today, so on. August 5th, 1979, I got on a plane. Here's another one of my props. My one-way ticket.
Oh, my goodness.
Piedmont Airlines, which doesn't even exist anymore.
Right.
And this is like a replica of what my ticket looked like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a credit card in those days. So on June 10th, again, tells you how crazy I am. It was Judy Garland's birthday, 1979. And I called the airlines, and it was an Air Force base. It's now a bigger airport, but it was an Air Force base. And I said, I want a one-way ticket to New York. What's the best way to get this? And they says, just come on in and we'll sell you the ticket. So I went to my dad and I said, could you drive me to the airport? And my dad said, no. He said, we're not playing into this game of yours. This is just a couple months before I'm going to go. And I said, well, then I'll go myself. I go out in front of our house. I swear to God, this is a true story. And I put my thumb out. Again, this is 1979.
Right. You could do that in those days and not be abducted.
So I put my thumb out. Sure enough, a car pulls up. This woman says, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to the Air Force base. She said, well, I'm going to pick up my husband. Swear to God. So I get in the car with this complete stranger, and we go to the airport, and I buy a one-way ticket. It was $87 one way to New York. And I remember holding this ticket in my hand. It's like the golden ticket in Willy Wonka. I went back to my parents and I said, I'm going to New York. And they laughed at me. Again, they did not take it seriously. The night before I left South Carolina, my mom and my dad are sitting there, and my dad says, what makes you think you're going to make it in New York City? And I swear to God, my sister may be watching, but this is a true story. I said, you. If I can live with you, I can live with anything.
Oh.
My father said, you'll be back in 3 weeks. And the next morning, when I got on the plane to come to New York, the last thing my father said to me was, I'll see you in 3 weeks. And I am telling you, coming to New York with $500 in my pocket, as I say, I had $500. I had a portfolio of photographs of me from shows that I'd done in South Carolina, which I lost on my first subway ride.
Oh, no. Oh.
I had my Bible because I was a good little Methodist boy.
You're a good little Methodist boy.
I had an umbrella that Sylvia Reddick, one of my directors, had given me, and a Michelin guide. That was it. And I came to New York, and I got on the plane, and I began to hyperventilate because for the first time, I allowed myself to really realize what I was doing. I was getting on a plane. I had never flown. I had never been anywhere before.
Right.
And if I had come, and I say this with the utmost respect to my parents, I love them both. But if I had come from a nurturing background, which I did not, I would not have lasted in New York beyond the 3 weeks.
Right.
Interesting.
I would have turned around and gone home. But no matter how bad things got in New York, I went, I'm not going to be defeated.
Right.
Years later, I was in New York at this point. I had a roommate and I'd been paying him cash. I come home one day to find an eviction notice on the door, and it turns out he had not been paying the rent in 6 months, and he had been pocketing the money. And I went to Center Street, 111 Center Street, to fight for my rights to stay there. The landlord did not know who I was because I'd been paying this guy cash. And he said, "You are out." He said, "I don't want you here. I don't know who you are. Get out." I swallowed my pride. I called my father. Now, mind you, I had been in New York at this point almost 10 years.
So I was going to ask you that. So you did survive for 10 years till the you-know-what hit the fan, and it happens to everybody.
And I called my father, and I said, "I hate to ask, but I need a loan." And my father said, "I'll send you a one-way ticket, but I'm not sending you any money."
Oh, my God.
And I said, "I'll figure it out." So I don't even know if they exist anymore, but they used to have these SRO hotels.
Oh, of course. There was one on my block.
There was one on 113th Street.
Single room occupancies.
And I, with a bathroom down the hall, without a lock on the door, plastic curtains, roaches and mice running up and down the halls all the time. I would come home and I would go to this room, which is smaller than my office that I'm in right now. And I would literally cry myself to sleep for a couple of years. It was also during this time that I'm discovering everything about me, fill in the blanks, and I'm out almost every night. I am out in the clubs. I am at the piano bars. I am, I spent more time being out than I was, at home. And around that same time, I got into a relationship with someone, which turned out not to be a good relationship. And I ended up going into therapy because of my relationship with this person. Through therapy, I discovered that I was still, after 10 years in New York, having anxiety attacks because of what my household life was like on weekends in South Carolina.
Wow.
Once it was like cracking a code. Once I was able to get through that,
identify it.
I was able to really get on my feet and really start to create a life for myself after 10 years. I mean, I continued to perform. I did shows. I did all these things. But, those first 10 years, I call them the hunger years. But I will tell you something. I would go back and live every one of them over in a heartbeat.
Right.
Because you had to evolve to the Richard Skipper that finally made it into therapy to unlock those doors. But that couldn't have happened earlier. You had to come to that breaking point. Now, I want to know, what were your survival jobs during that 10-year period?
Well, this is a funny story that I could laugh about now, but not at the time. So the Christmas before I come to New York, I run into my third grade teacher, Diane Ray. And she said, "I know you're going, what are you doing? You're graduating from high school this year." And I said, "I'm going to go to New York." And she said, "Do you know anyone there?" And I said, "No." She's, "Well, David Johnson, if you're watching, David, watch." So David Johnson, she said, was now living in New York. I knew David. He had done the lights for The Unsinkable Molly Brown, which I had done. And his father was the superintendent of the school board. So I wrote David a letter on my 18th birthday, which is February 11th, 1979. I wrote a letter and I said, "I'm coming to New York and I want to know if you can suggest a place to stay." I never asked to stay with him. And then I said, you'll laugh at this, but it's the truth. I said, "I've heard that young men go to the YMCA when they come to New York. Are there any YMCAs there, you?" So I don't hear a word from him. That should have been clue number one. So I waited a month, and then I called his father, who I knew from my hometown, and I said, "I wrote to David. I don't know if he got my letter or not. Do you have, could I call him?" And he said, "Sure." So I called David. David said, Ricky, as I was called in South Carolina, I'm so sorry I didn't get back in touch with you, but I have my own business. I have my own apartment. Why don't you come and stay with me and I'll get you a job when you get here?
Wow.
And I said, oh my God, that's wonderful. So the day that I arrive in New York, our next door neighbor, this is another funny story. Our next door neighbor was a Washington, D.C. cab driver. And when so I called David the morning that I was coming to New York to remind him what time I was going to be arriving at LaGuardia Airport. He said, I can't pick you up. Something's come up. Take a taxi. That's red flag number 2. So my next door neighbor, they said, oh my God, they're going to know that you're fresh off the turnip truck. They said, you've got to take an airport limousine. Well, what they meant was a shuttle.
Right.
Oh.
Not a limo. Not a limo. Oh my God.
I got off, I get my bag. I am standing in line. I see a limousine. I stand up and I rent a black stretch limousine.
Hey, you arrived in style.
That's how I arrived in New York.
You were meant for limousines, Richard Skipper. There you go.
I arrived when we got to 86th and 2nd, which was a 5-story walk up, and David came downstairs to see me, and there I am getting out of a limousine. It's like, what is going on here? We go up to the apartment. It was August 5th. Hot, hazy, humid day.
Again.
I go up the stairs, and we get to the top to his apartment, and it is like walking into an opium den. I mean, the hot haze was all over the room, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? So got me a glass of water. We settled down. He said, how would you like to see Central Park? Again, we lived at 86th and 2nd. So we went for a walk to Central Park. He took me to these 3 points in Central Park: Bethesda Fountain. Bethesda Fountain was a different Bethesda Fountain in 19.
Oh my God, it was Drug Dealer City in those days.
Dealer City. Thank you. I'm going to use that line, Wendy. Yeah. It was almost, I thought I was coming into breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
In the middle
came out of a limo.
Taxi driver and Midnight Cowboy. So then we leave there and we are walking through the park, and he walks me through the Rambles. Tim, you know what the Rambles are.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't exclude me from that. I've been here the same amount of time as you. I knew what the Rambles were back in those days. Now I bird watch there.
There was a lot of bird watching going on, but,
but not with birds in those days, right? So,
no.
Oh my God, Bethesda Fountain, then the Rambles.
We go through there, and then we go back to the apartment, and he's packing his things into a duffel bag. And he said, I'm staying with a friend tonight. You've got the place to yourself. But he said, and you'll meet Brad and Lisa tomorrow morning. I said, who are Brad and Lisa? He said, they're my roommates. And I said, do they know I'm coming here? And he said, they're going to love you. They'll meet you. And he left. Here I am in New York City, my first night in New York. I did not know anyone. I didn't even know how to order a pizza. And if I ordered a pizza, I wouldn't even be able to tell them how to get there. There was nothing in the refrigerator, I kid you not, except for a carafe of water, a jar of honey, and wheat bread. I grew up on Wonder Bread. I had never even had wheat bread before. So after he left, I sat down and had probably one of the biggest crying jags of my life.
Wow.
Now, this apartment was a railroad flat. So the next morning, I get up to go to the bathroom, my first day, August 6th, 1979, to celebrate my first day in New York. And
Richard Skipper celebrates.
I'm walking through the apartment, and I walked through what was Brad and Lisa's bedroom and found them doing what comes naturally. She looked up at me and she said, who the F are you? Only she said the word. And he said, well, hello there. And I said, I'm David's new roommate. And she said, over my dead body.
Wow.
And I go into the bathroom and I sit on the edge of the bathtub and again, crying again. And I'm scared to death. And David finally came and knocked on the door and he says, come out, let's talk. So I came out of the bathroom. I sat down with Brad and Lisa, and I told them everything. And when I told them that I was going to be working for David, they laughed. They said, he's a temp. He doesn't have his own business. And I said, well, what's a temp? I didn't even know what that meant. So they called David, and he told me how to get to where he was. He was down on 14th Street. So I went down. There's a little down on Jane Street and Bank Street. Is an old, I think it's still there. This old diner cafeteria-like place with a big old Coca-Cola sign on the front. So I go, I meet him there, and I said, why did you lie to me? And he said, well, if I told you the truth, you probably never would have come. And he said, this is what you need to do. And we got the Village Voice. And in those days, on the back page of the Village Voice,
I remember
all these job ads.
Right.
And he said, circle every one that says no experience necessary.
I love it. I love it.
I had no experience. I was right out of high school.
Right.
So I went, the first place I went to was 55 Water Street. I walked in. I said, my name is Richard Skipper. I just arrived yesterday from Conway, South Carolina. It's my first day in New York, and I need a job. And they hired me. And I worked as a messenger for $6 an hour.
Wow.
But it was a great job to have coming to New York, because as a messenger, I was all over Manhattan.
Yeah,
and you got to know Manhattan. You got to learn
Manhattan. And that was my first survival job in New York City.
Wow. Well,
so
now,
then 2 weeks later, I come home early one day, and I find Brad and David doing what comes naturally.
Right. And no Lisa. Lisa was not doing anything.
Lisa is out working. And I walked in, and they both said, well, hello there.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, you're breaking up.
Richard froze.
There's a reason why they want me here.
Okay.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, you're
frozen. Your
Okay.
frame is frozen.
Yeah.
But
well,
your voice
you
is
can
going.
still hear me.
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay, good. So I, and then, and I had met at my first audition in New York. That was a week later, August 9th. I auditioned for Stardust Memories, the Woody Allen film.
Yeah.
And I met this woman, Millie Brown. I called her the unthinkable Millie Brown. And she was my first real friend in New York.
Wow.
We would go out, and she introduced me to my first pastrami sandwich, my first time on the Staten Island Ferry, seeing the Statue of Liberty for the first time, going to the top of the Empire State Building. All of these first. The first Broadway show I saw was Oklahoma in 1979.
Get out. My God, I remember that version.
Yes.
Wow.
And Millie and I went together, and she became my first friend. She was convinced that I was going to become a priest and that I would leave show business. She was, a staunch Republican, I found out later, and a staunch Catholic. And as I started to realize, I was the most asexual person to come out of South Carolina. We mentioned, I mentioned Susan Silver earlier. She talks about what her college and high school years were like.
Exactly, right.
Same thing with me. And then when you realize who and what you're all about, it was something that was the antithesis of what Millie wanted me to be. I remember one time we went to Mass at St. Patrick's, and it was a Mass, are you ready for this? For McCarthy.
Wow.
And I said, what are we doing here? And I found out that day that I was at a Mass that was sponsored by the John Birch Society.
Get out.
And I said, I want to leave. I was, because I felt that he had destroyed so many lives in Hollywood.
Yeah,
I did not want to be there. She said, do not embarrass me. She had paid for this brunch. We go to brunch. May I be struck down by lightning if I'm lying to you by what I'm about to tell you. I sat down at the table, and seated next to me is Roy Cohn.
Get out. Unbelievable. Wow. Wow.
Those were my early days in New York.
Well, Richard, I want to put forward. We have a clip.
Firstly, yes, please. Just one moment, please. We've got a couple of videos. Let's watch those back to back. And you had mentioned Carol Channing much earlier. Yep. So we will talk more about her upon our return with our interview with the fabulous Richard Skipper.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Oh, they applauded all the old numbers and everything. I had a wonderful evening.
And a girl over 6'3" loves a man who comes up to her ear. Surely it's obvious she'll never be seduced, but sometimes soul condescends to give her beau a little boost. I put my hand in there. I put my hand in there.
See, if you want, you can get yourself another act, huh? You can kind of...
Well, he's so much younger than I am that he will live on, and I feel like I can go at any time. I'm 86 now, so it doesn't matter when I go.
It's so nice to have you here where you belong. You're looking swell, Harry, it rhymes. They can tell, Harry, you're still glowing, you're still crowing, you're still going strong. I feel the room swaying for this band, playing one of our old favorite songs from way back when. So, golly gee, Carol, find me a vacancy. Harry, promise you'll never go away again. She's just a little girl from Little Rock. She lived on the wrong side of the tracks till a gentleman took her out one night, and after he taught her wrong from right, she moved to the right side of the tracks. Then someone broke her heart in Little Rock, and she left old Arkansas. Like a little lost lamb she roamed about, so she went to New York and she found out the one you call your daddy ain't your pa. She was young and determined, she was wine and dine and ermine. Every night opportunity would knock, and some of these days in her fancy clothes she's going back home and thumb her nose at the one who's done her wrong, the one who's done her wrong, the one who's done her wrong in Little Rock. She's just a little girl from Little Rock, but fate led her straight to Murray Hill. She suddenly had a charge account, it amounted to quite a large amount, but somehow she never got the bill. Although she lost her heart in Little Rock, she still wasn't smart about romance. She's discovered since then that a girl in love usually gets a token of a man's appreciation in advance. Her landlord adored her, he was like a father toward her, till she found the oldest city block. And now that she's known in the biggest banks, she's going back home to give her thanks to the one who's done her wrong, the one who's done her wrong, the one who's done her wrong. One more time for Harry.
that was Carol's.
Delightful.
That was Carol's head. Carol was sitting right there watching the show.
Oh goodness! Now, in the first clip, when Carol Channing was talking, that was you on stage.
That was me. Yes.
Yeah, because you looked so much like her.
Him, I swear to God, right?
Firstly, in P-Town, August 5th, at the Post Office Cafe, an evening with Richard Skipper, The Magic of Believing. Get your tickets. Don't have him standing out in the hot weather barking all this time.
No. And this is the first time that I have performed in Provincetown that I'm performing as myself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well,
That's
that was the next thing, was because you were a tribute artist of Carol Channing. Tell us just briefly, like, how that got started and some of your
Well, as I mentioned before, I used to perform on the front steps of my high school, and Carol Channing was one of the voices that I did. So I discovered a place in 1980 called the Piano Bar, 67th and Broadway.
Absolutely.
I used to go there every Thursday night, was their Broadway night, and Houston Allred played the piano. And I got up to sing one night. I had friends visiting from South Carolina, and I finished singing as myself. And Houston said, "Do you have anything else prepared?" And one of my friends yelled, "Do Carol Channing." And he said, you perform as Carol Channing? And I went, no. And they said, no, he used to perform on the front steps of our high school, which got a big laugh from everybody. And he said, "Do you know Hello Dolly?" And I said, "Well, of course I know Hello Dolly." He said, "Well, I mean, do you know all the parts?" So he jumped up, he cast the waiters who did the number with me. I did the number. I was 19 at this point. I get a standing ovation.
Love it.
This woman, God bless her, Leola Harlow, comes running up to me and she says, "What's your drag name?" And I said, "My what?" I didn't even know what that meant. She said, "Your drag name. Obviously, you do this professionally." And I said, "No." She's, "Well, if you ever decide that you want to do it, I want to be the one to dress you." Famous last words. I said, "It will never happen. I'm not going down that path." Well, what ended up happening was that every time I would come to the Piano Bar, Houston would save me to the end of the evening. And
oh my God, you were
the Dolly number was the grand finale every week.
Wow.
And so after about 3 or 4 months of this, I auditioned for a show called All American Boy. I go in and I walk in the door and they go, "You're Carol Channing." And my heart was up in my throat. I said, "This is the end of my career." And they said, "Well, the opening of the second act, the characters go into a club and someone comes out and sings All American Boy, which was the title song." They said, "What if they go into a drag club and a Carol Channing impersonator sings All American Boy?" So I went off with the musical director. I learned the song. I opened the show and we stopped the show. And after the show was over that night, the producer and the director came into the dressing room and they said, "We're cutting the song from the show because that's not what this show is about. And you're going to steal all the press, everything. We have to cut it." But I had a costume. And so every year on Halloween, I would dress as Carol and I would go to all the piano bars.
Oh my God.
And that was a tradition. In 1980, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version. In 1980, John Glines wrote a show called Men of Manhattan. He wrote a character for me called Carl Channing. The guy, I didn't dress as Carol in the show, but I was obsessed with Carol. So that became part of the show. And then in 1997, Carol was coming back to Broadway in Hello Dolly, her last revival. And a friend of mine called me up and said, "If you don't do a show about Carol Channing, you're making the biggest mistake of your life." And I said, "I don't think the audience," and she was still very active at this point. I said, "I don't think audiences would come and see me." He says, "Well, you'll only know if you try it." So I started putting the show together. And then the New York City Gay Men's Chorus was doing a tribute to Jerry Herman. This was not the one that I appeared in. I would do that years later. But a friend of mine called me up and said he was playing the after party and that Carol was going to be there and that I should crash the party as Carol Channing.
Yes.
We crashed the party.
Brilliant.
And that was it. She fell in love with me, thank God.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
It was the beginning. That clip that you saw earlier from That's Entertainment was footage that he took after the show that night.
Amazing.
I had done a benefit that night for Carol's Foundation for the Arts. I'll bring this up. Here we are together. One of my favorite photos.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful.
I stayed with her in Palm Springs. Prince Fleet is watching.
Yeah.
Prince Fleet is watching. I saw him on there. Yep.
And we were both at Carol Channing's star dedication. We found out just recently that we were both there.
Cool.
But that night that I did this benefit, it was supposed to be a private party for someone else. And we ended up doing this as a benefit for Carol. I get a phone call, kid you not, from Neil Sedaka. Neil Sedaka was supposed to be the entertainment at the party that got canceled. They were now bringing the party to our show because Carol was going to be there. I was going to be performing as Carol. That footage of me on stage was from that night. And Neil Sedaka asked me if I would mind bringing him on to do a number or two. Can you believe this? And I said, let me see if I can squeeze you in.
I bet you never forgot saying that.
So, I mean, the show that I'm doing in Provincetown, I will say this, before the show starts, we pass out question cards, and people get to ask me about people that I've worked with, places I've been, and events that have shaped my life. And I don't see any of the cards before the show. I come out, I open the show, I talk about Conway, South Carolina, and then I start answering these questions. And because as you can see, we're already an hour, there's so much to tell.
So much. And I have to tell you, Richard, we have so many comments, which I knew we would have today. And I really want to read some of them because look at this. Of course, Prince Fleet Easton is on here. Apollo Cabrera said his grandfather's best friend was Carol.
Wow.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? Tree Sequoia says, love you all. Yeah, if you can scroll, Tim.
The Divas of Democracy. That's Dorothy Bishop. She says, hi, kids. She says, hi, kids. That she signed on as her political drag page. Yeah.
I love her.
Yeah,
and Carlos Cajones says, Wepa and woohoo, loves us. So that's good. Also, my dear friend Fabio from the Bronx says, hi, my dear friends. Just dropping in for a quick hello and to show some love. You got Lori Towers, who says local 802 AFM walks with you.
Great.
Because when you were talking about the strike.
Yes.
Let me see. I'll try to the Jack Filan.
Yeah.
Jack Filan says, to see Richard Skipper and Wendy and Tim, whom I know because of Richard Skipper. And Richard not only introduces you to stars, but connect folks. Amen.
That indeed.
And his husband Danny is wonderful, sweet person. Talk about a happy couple. Bravo.
Yes, I'm so lucky. Yes.
And Tree Sequoia says, I met Richard years ago. You probably know Tree from Stonewall.
Tree and I dated in high school.
Stop. Really?
No, I'm joking.
Oh, okay.
You had us on that one. I love that story.
You got to tell us more about that one.
Yeah, that story. Suze Valgenero says, hello, dolls. Thank you. Suze is so great. She tunes in every week. Wonderful designer. Prince Fleet Easton said that Luther, Dorothy's baby, is watching you too.
I love Luther.
Also, Jack Fallon says, I must mention Richard and Sarah Berg at Don't Tell Mamas with the two Carols at Christmas shows. Wow.
He did Carol Burnett and I was Carol Channing.
Oh my God, how fun.
The two Carols.
We recreated, Carol Channing appeared on the first episode of many of Carol Burnett's seasons. And every time that Carol Channing appeared on Carol Burnett, Carol Burnett got an Emmy Award.
Wow.
Just saying.
Wow. Also, Tree Sequoia says, love you all so much.
Same here.
And say hi to Richard.
Well, and everybody, again, send everybody you know to Provincetown August 5th.
Yes, everyone knows people up there. Please do that.
Yes, to see An Evening with Richard Skipper, The Magic of Believing.
I mean, it's so funny that the first time I went to Provincetown, I was 27 years young. I stepped off the bus on Commercial Street.
Amazing.
And it was Carnival Week. And Cafe Blase, which is now the patio, but Cafe Blase had these huge colored Japanese lanterns in front. And I was so excited to be there. And I said, I have to perform here someday, because we went to see Jimmy James. We saw Jimmy James, phenomenal. We saw Randy Allen. There was a guy called Big Ed. There were so many people that I saw for the first time. Many of them are no longer here, but I dreamed of going to Provincetown. The last time I performed in Provincetown, which we will not go into details, but it was 10 years ago. And I, unfortunately, was working with someone, and it was not a pleasant experience.
Oh, it ended ugly. We know about those things.
I left.
It all happens to everybody.
I left Provincetown in tears.
Oh.
I cry a lot, everyone, saying I got to come back someday. And here I am. 10 years later, I'm coming back on my terms.
Yes, exactly. Where you are in total control. Love that.
That's
Uh-huh. Just real quick, I also wanted to say, like, during the pandemic, a lot of things happened. Our show started, your show started. Also, tell them, I wanted you to mention about Richard Skipper Celebrates. Well, let's leave it there. So tell us a little bit about Richard Skipper Celebrates and how it came about, and some of your favorite interviews. Just a list of names.
Just a quick list.
Very quickly, before the pandemic hit, Leslie Ann Warren, who is one of my favorite people.
I love her.
And I have been very, very fortunate to call her friend. I was going to do a radio podcast, and I called Leslie and asked if she would be my first guest. She was coming to New York to do Broadway Backwards, which is my favorite night of the year in the theater. I called her. She was my first guest that I did with an interview. And then COVID hit. And someone suggested that I do a virtual live on camera thing. Talk about my favorites. I'm very excited about having Susan Silver on the show today.
Oh, God, she's great.
Yesterday, I had Steve Gutenberg on the show. He's got a new show called The Gutenberg Bible. And I look, I don't know if you ever had Steve Peters on your show.
No. We haven't, no.
But Steve Peters was diagnosed with AIDS in 1983. He went on, Tammy Faye Baker interviewed him. This is depicted in the movie, The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Wow.
And so, and then because of his appearance on that show, Jerry Falwell did everything in his power to bring down the PTO club. And that was the beginning of the end. Steve Peters died at the beginning of this month. But I had an interview with him on this show, and we remained in touch. Carol Cook, she's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Anita Pointer, she's no longer with us.
Right.
Sarah Dash, she's no longer with us. Right. Robert Patrick, who is some consider the father of gay theater, is no longer with us. And when I give these people a chance to tell their stories, I know that their stories are there.
Yeah, right.
That keeps me going. And
of course,
what I do is important.
And you know what? You're honoring their legacies, Richard, because you just said they're not there, but people can look at these interviews. You've got them archived on your YouTube channel. And what an amazing thing. You keep their person living on. And that is a very powerful thing.
And I'll tell you, and you both know that, and this is the secret. I'm going to share the secret with everybody of success. It boils down to one or two words. Yes or no. And we live in a world where it's very easy to say no. And a lot of people say no. A lot of people create barriers. A lot of people put up walls. when everybody was saying, no, 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 you will not go to New York. You'll be back in 3 weeks.
You did.
I, like tunnel vision, kept going.
Right.
I reach out to a lot of people, and now they're reaching out, thank God, to me. And it's very easy for me to say yes. I've reached out to a lot of people to get the word out as much as possible about my show. Both of you said yes. And I'm telling you, I don't take it lightly.
Oh. Well, again, I'll give you an address to send the flowers to, Richard. We'll put a dinner for Tim and I could be thrown in Sardi's, of course.
Yeah.
Or you're in our home, in our backyard. So
that works too.
Come for a nice dinner.
But you're welcome on But you are welcome on our show anytime, Richard Skipper. I absolutely love and adore you. Unfortunately, I wish I could sit and talk to you for hours.
We could do 2 more hours with you, Richard Skipper.
But
and
one
that
last
was
time,
the beginning.
But tell them about where they can go to Richard Skipper Celebrates, and also for your tickets.
If you go to Post Office Cafe and Club, Post Office Club and Cafe, you can. There's a button that says Get Tickets. You can do it easily there. Or you can go to richardskipper.com, not richardskippercelebrates.com, richardskipper.com, and it's very easy to purchase tickets there as well. There are VIP tickets, which are $40, and then there are general admission, $30. But this venue, again, we're celebrating, 44 years, actually, we're celebrating that night. 44 years. And I was so excited to be able, because for me, it's a party. It's not about me. It's about the people that are in the room. And I really incorporate them as much into the show. And there are going to be giveaways, and there are going to be prizes.
Oh,
show up.
Well, again, Richard Skipper, thank you so much for everything you do, all you've contributed, who you've become, just everything. We are so grateful.
Thank you for being in our worlds, and so many people that are on here and that aren't on here. Everyone knows you. They know, you know what? It's a family. And all of us have to keep paying it forward. That's
all
what
interconnected.
Right.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you again, Richard Skipper. And don't hang up yet. We want to come back. We'll chat for a minute and take a picture. How about that?
Picture. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.